today my talk is titled Seeing and Being Seen. So I want to start out with a story about a Buddhist monk in Thailand. In 1957, they were going to move this big clay statue to a new location. And they cracked it. So one of the monks saw a glimmer through the clay and began chipping away at the clay one night. By morning, he revealed a golden statue because it appears that many, many years ago, when the country was being invaded, they covered the statue with clay so that no one would know its true value. And over the years, it was forgotten that that is what had happened. And that's kind of like each one of us. I believe that each one of us is born with a pure spirit. And over the years, to protect ourselves from being invaded, from being hurt, and from vulnerability, we create our own protective layer of clay, so to speak. And so now is the time that we get to start chipping that away and uncovering the perfection that lies beneath, seeing and being seen. Now, at the ACSL Center in Montana, every Sunday morning we bless our children and the children of the world and the child within each one of us. And we say, we see you, who you really are, made in the image and likeness of God. We cherish you, we support you, and we love you. And what if each one of us said, I see me, who I really am, made in the image and likeness of God. I cherish me, I support me, and I love me. So let's try saying that together. I see me, who I really am, made in the image and likeness of God. I cherish me, I support me, and I love me. And so it is. So it is. Yeah. So I see you, who you really are. Each one of us has the opportunity to look beyond the facade that we have created so that we don't have to show people the truth of who we are, because then, if you really knew me, the real me, you might not like me. So I'm not going to show you what I feel is the truth of me. What I'm going to show you is what I think you want to see. My chameleon self. You know, I carry this chameleon around with me in my body. It's not the truth of me, but it protects me from being vulnerable. And you don't see my flaws. Well, I think you don't see my flaws. and perhaps you don't know where I'm vulnerable. You can see how easy it is for me to question myself. It's not a difficult task to say, who am I really? Because sometimes I think we lose sight of the fact of who we really are because we're so busy putting up this screen so no one knows. So last week we talked about being vulnerable, and we talked about getting to know ourselves and getting to know what we're truly like. What we know is that when we nurture the vulnerability within ourselves, we get to let it out picture into our relationship with others. If I can be vulnerable to you, perhaps you can be vulnerable to me. And it's a building block to build a healthy community because we're not hiding the truth of us. In order to do this, we have to be sure that we have created a safe space for people to be, one that affirms our wholeness and our oneness. So I read in one of those self-awareness books, Who Are You? Yeah. Let's ask ourselves, who am I really? Now think about that for a moment. Who am I? Who was I before the world told me who I should be? Because that's that chameleon thing again, the world, okay, this is what you want? You got it. Each one of us has a different answer, and each one of us has a different reason for that answer. So I have one more question for you. Who are you not? Who are you not? Here's a thought. You're not the role you play. You're not the clothes you wear. You're not your job. You are not the car you drive or the food you eat. You are so much more than all of that. You are a wonderful, inspirational child of the divine. You are not your achievements or your acquisition or your background. That's not who you are. Those may be how you identify your ego self, but that is not the truth of you, because your sacred self is so much more. I see you, who you really are. Ernest Holmes tells us that each one of us individualizes God. Each one of us has a God that is personal to us, that represents God to us in its own way. My God may look a little different to me than your God looks to you. None of us are identical. And yet think about this. Each one of us is a representative of the one God. Even though we are not identical, we are a diverse group. We come from different backgrounds. We have different life experiences. Think how boring it would be if we all had the same life experiences. And through these life experiences, we draw out that God self that's within us. We bring it forth. The God self is light and love and beauty and peace and harmony and joy. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was a kid growing up, I was told not to talk to strangers. And so when I had children, I taught them not to talk to strangers. Is that true for you as well? So now as adults, are we still holding on to that? Do not talk to strangers. So my question is, who is a stranger? Who is a stranger? Does that mean we're not talking to anybody who's different than we are? Are we limiting ourselves by not reaching out to others? Who do you see as a stranger? Who do I see as a stranger? Am I promoting a sense of separation? Is it us and them? I have a friend here. Ernest Holmes, in The Science of Mind, says, we are individual entities in a universe which furnishes the background and the foreground for each of us. But each is unique, different, yet fundamentally alike. Why then should it seem strange if this whole differentiation of the physical universe is but a different of form, distinguishing objects from one another because of the arrangement? That the Enlightenment should see back of this arrangement the Word of God. Again, I see you as you really are, made in the image and likeness of God. Now, most of us, if you have a social media account, you get to choose, don't you, what other people see. You get to make it up if you want to. You get to create a persona of what you want other people to think you are. That's a lot easier than when you're standing toe-to-toe with somebody, looking them in the eyes, and they're staring back at you. That can be a bit uncomfortable for me. Maybe when you're looking at me, you'll see something that you really don't like. Even though I think I'm pretty good at hiding my flaws. Maybe if you see my shortcomings, you'll decide that you don't want to be my friend anymore. That you don't like me and you don't want me around. Or perhaps I'm misjudging you. And perhaps I'm misjudging others. And that impacts all of us, what our judgments. It's so hard, isn't it, to let go of judgment? It's hard for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's really hard for me to let go of judgments. And when I see the mistakes I've made, I can be really, really hard on myself. Oh, look, I messed up and now they're going to judge me. And so Science of Mind teaches that we're all one. So there's a children's book and it's named All I See is Part of Me. And the little book says, I am my hands, I am my feet, I am the dog across the street. All I see is part of me, and I am part of all I see. And that's the truth, isn't it? We are all part and parcel of each other. And so when we get to look at our friends, we get to look at them how they are now. We don't look at their past. We don't look at what they might become. We don't look at them and judge them and make comparisons of them. We don't should on them. What we do is we embrace them exactly the way they are in this very moment, the truth of them, the God self of them. We see you who you really are. Individualized expressions of the divine. We can show up authentically and not have to pretend to be somebody that we're not. We get to respect and honor the other person just the way they are. That can be quite an event anyway, I believe, to try to honor someone exactly the way they are, even though they're not the way I would be. You know, we carry a lot of judgment with us. And so to let that go is quite a feat, and it can be some work. So Ernest Holmes wrote, "We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but it is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God." And that's in the Declaration of Principles. And sometimes I think we forget. We forget who we are. We forget that we are individualized expressions of God. But remember, the science of mind teaches oneness. It doesn't teach sameness. It teaches oneness. Oneness means we're all manifestations of the one. Individualized expressions. Each one of us is a component that makes up the whole. It's like having a big jigsaw puzzle, and each one of us is unique. But each one of us is necessary in order to have that whole picture. So the ancient Greek aphorism that says, "Know thyself," is attributed to Socrates, and it is inscribed in gold at the entrance of the temple of Apollo at Delphi. And think about this. What does it mean to know yourself? What does it mean to know myself? Well, every master, every prophet, every avatar has told us the same thing. Know thyself. Know thyself. What does that mean? And that truly should be the objective of our lives. I know myself sometimes. Sometimes I am aware that I'm an individualized expression of God, and sometimes it kind of escapes me and I forget it. And I have to be reminded. And it's sometimes that's pretty simple, and sometimes it can be kind of painful to be reminded of who I am. But it should be the objective of our lives, to know the truth of who we are. I see me, who I really am, made in the image and likeness of God. And when we allow ourselves to be seen, we invite others to allow themselves to be seen as well. In this exchange, we can create a beautiful vulnerability. We can create communities that nurture that nurture our individual expression, that nurture our vulnerability, our connection, and our belonging, and we can support one another in being the truth of who we are. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to have that facade. We don't have to have whatever it is we put out there on Facebook. We can be the truth of who we are, and we can listen. And we can listen to others, and we can understand, and we can build that connection. It is through this process, this building process, that we gain clarity about ourselves, about our community, about others, and we get to look below the surface of what is easily seen. You know, it's nice to go through life and just see the surface, but to see what is creating what we're observing. And we can practice authenticity, and we can practice connecting with one another, and we can allow ourselves to let that out picture in our relationships and in our community. We can bring our whole self to the table, and we can allow others to do the same thing. We get to live out loud, and so do they. Marianne Williamson, in A Return to Love, says, "As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to allow theirs to shine. As we are liberated from our own fear, Our presence liberates others. When I am liberated from my own fear, my liberation helps others. Ernest Holmes says in Living Without Fear, man is an individualized center of God-conscious life, a point in the infinite sea of life, and an intelligent, self-knowing point. Man is the outcome of God's desire to express himself as individuality. The whole meaning of experience is to promote this individuality and thus to provide a fuller channel for the expression of the supreme spirit of the universe. Now, sometimes we form an opinion about someone by stories that we've heard. You know, you hear this, you've already got an opinion, you haven't even met them yet. But you have an opinion of how someone is because of the stories you've heard about them, and you don't really know the truth of them. What you know is that that gossip repeatedly has become the truth for us. And then when we get to look at them as they really are, maybe we find out they're not like that at all. They're really not like that at all. We are one. We are individualized expressions of God. We are one, and we are different. Wouldn't it be crazy to think that we're all the same? Wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same? We have different thoughts. We have different wants. We have different likes. We are unique and yet different. And we are showing up in human form. Individualized expressions of God showing up in human form. In Tracy Brown's book, The Stained Glass Spirit, she says, becoming a spiritual community where oneness does not require sameness, when in fact it is only, the community is like a stained glass window. Think about that. We're a stained glass window, and each one of us is contributing a little piece to the beauty of that window. Each one of us has our own unique qualities that make that window what it is, that beautiful stained glass window. Each one of us gets to express our uniqueness. Each one of us being the truth of who we are and honoring one another. And sometimes that can be difficult for me to see the truth of who I am, and they're not what I think they should be, and to be able to honor the truth of them, because they are individualized expressions of God just like me. And when we can truly see each other, we become inclusive. We understand that we're all vulnerable, and we're all living on this planet Earth, going around in space. Think about that. We are just soaring through space together. Each one of us being the truth of who we are, and each one of us gets to honor the other people and the different gifts that they bring to the table. Because we all have a gift that we bring to the table, and they're different. And we have a smorgasbord. I think that's great. So I have a story that I saw on the internet last night, and it's about a school bus driver. You know, the internet can be a distracting thing, but it can be a marvelous thing as well. I drive a school bus, and I have a sixth grader who I would like to talk about. Last week, he was talking about an elderly neighbor who did not leave her house for weeks. I tried to explain to him how hard it can be sometimes for her to do things. And so on Tuesday, when I pulled up, he wasn't at the bus stop waiting. I looked over and I saw him shoveling the snow off of her porch. And I was early, so I waited for him. And the other kids asked why I waited, and I said, anyone helping someone deserves a few extra minutes. And all the kids, when he got on the bus, started asking him questions about his neighbor. And the next day, 7 children got on the bus with blankets, food, and cards for this woman. And I delivered them after work. Now every day she stands on the porch and she waves at the bus, good morning. I am so proud of him for stepping up and doing the right thing. He taught all the children something important. That's another example of our actions creating other actions, creating connections. Our actions create connections. They allow us to connect to other people. And each one of us has an opportunity at different times to connect, to be vulnerable. You know, what if that woman had been had been upset, not set up, had been upset by that? How dare you? How dare you stick your nose in my business? But she wasn't. He took a risk. It's up to each one of us to bring our truth to the table, to use our actions to create connection. Action creates more action. We see you, who you really are, made in the image and likeness of God. We cherish you, we support you, and we love you. So let us pray. Sweet, sweet Spirit, Father, Mother, God, that divine and holy essence in which we live and breathe and have our being. God, the good, omnipotent. There is absolutely nothing outside of God. God who is light and love and peace and joy and harmony. God who is health and wholeness and abundance. God, the good, omnipotent. And I am one with that whole and holy presence. And if that is true for me, that is true for all. One with the one. Individualized expressions of that divine self. So as I speak my word, I speak it knowing that as we come to the table and we allow ourselves to see others as they truly are and to be seen, we make that connection with our wholeness and their wholeness. That we build a beautiful and loving environment in which we can truly express who we really are, and I am grateful. I'm grateful for that opportunity that we have to come together in light and in love and to share our individual perspectives, to share our unique qualities, to be the truth of who we are. I simply say thank you, God, as I release this word now to the perfect working of the perfect law, which always, always, and only says yes. Please join me in affirming, and so it is.